and welcome to 9 to 42, the podcast from the team at the Guitar Show UK. Join us for interviews, updates and chat with artists, influencers and those that manufacture the gear that we love. Hello and welcome to 9 to 42, which is the podcast from the guys at the Guitar Show UK. And my very good friend Jason Hunt is looking wired from yesterday's coffee deluge. How are you, Jace?
Oh, I'm very good, thank you, mate. How are you?
Do you know what? Apart from the shit show and what the hell have our cousins across the pond done, apart from that, I'm fine.
It was inevitable. It really was. We went out to the NAMM show in January, and a couple of things. I can't remember if it was this year or last year. We bought a pizza to share, and it cost $50.
It did.
And then I filled the car up when we were on the way back to the airport, and it cost $70. Go back 10 years in America and filling the car up on the way back to the airport would have cost you $20. This was always about money. It was never about anything else. And whether it was Biden, Harris's fault that the economy was screwed, it doesn't really matter. Ask Rishi Sunak. You know, it's a vote against what's there, not a vote for Trump. The fact that I think he's an orange buffoon is irrelevant. It was inevitable it was going to happen.
I don't think you've made me feel much better.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. Thanks for trying, or possibly thanks not for trying.
But this is the problem with social media and echo chambers and everything, and nobody looks at the facts. And the facts are the American economy is screwed, and the government will always pay for that. And also, and I hate to say this because it goes against everything that I believe, the Democrats screwed it up because they let Biden go on for far too long, because he clearly wasn't capable. And also, and this is the most horrible thing to say, but I suspect it's very true for big chunks of America, they put a candidate that was female and black. She didn't stand a chance.
That is unfortunately probably true as well.
I've just been on holiday when there was a lot of Americans there, and it was interesting the sentiment of the guy's an idiot, but I'm still going to vote for him. Yeah. I think that's probably represents 80% of the people that voted for him. I don't think many people believe in him as an individual. It was what the alternative is and what it might do for the economy, being the party that sits behind it. But I think the general consensus is he's an idiot.
Yeah.
And those sage words that you've heard were from our guest. And we were trying to decide how to introduce our guest. And it's actually quite complicated.
The English idiot.
Well, there's a bit of that. Because he has got a lot of fingers in the music instrument pie, shall we say. That sounds wrong. That sounds very, very wrong. But we're going to go with it.
Continuing the Trump theme, fingers in pies is probably quite close.
Our guest is Tim Lobley, and you could have come across Tim for a number of reasons. You could have come across Tim because of his retail business. You could have come across Tim because of some of the brands that he distributes and is involved in. And we're going to get into all of that in a minute. But I think the easiest way, actually, of trying to get a sense of that is just to ask you straight out, Tim, what do you do?
Certainly, I don't ever get to the bottom of my to-do list. That's probably one thing I do. Oh, that's a double negative, is it? So essentially, I started out in the industry. I have a retail business that, for guitar buyers, is probably known reasonably well, which is Sound Effects up in North near Liverpool, and we primarily focus on high-end guitars. And then a few years ago, I came across a company called Cream Tea, which was a pickup company, got involved in that, ultimately took ownership of it. We then started to develop guitars as well. And then last year, towards the end of last year, I had an approach from a Swiss investor to buy Cream Tea and put it into an umbrella company in Switzerland. And that now sits there. And through that umbrella company, we've now set up a distribution company, distributing Cream Tea, Maybach, Kaufman, the Maybach and Kaufman brands not being ours, also Thermion pedals. And we have a pickup swapping system called Guitar X that was formerly Relish, because I bought Relish in administration. And we've also just bought another guitar brand, a long old American guitar brand that's dormant called Stromberg. So yeah, all of that, all of the above.
Lots of fingers
Yeah,
in the pie.
yeah.
I was right, you know.
You were right, yeah.
That is a hell of a lot to unpack. The whole process of getting to the umbrella company, that's fairly recent, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
Right, okay. So we'll come on to that in a bit. Let's go right back to the beginning. So, sound effects, when does it start? When do you get involved? Does it start with you? Did you come into it? How did that come about?
It starts with me being very drunk at a party, like many things. And a local guitar shop owner, a very, very small guitar shop, said, when I retire, there's a long list of people that want to buy my shop. And I said, put me on it. Prior to that, I was in finance and banking, strategic. And I'd spent a little bit of time trading guitars on eBay. I'd built a sort of a financial model to forecast pricing on eBay. So you bought guitars and resold them. And it was quite a successful mathematical model to do that in the early days of eBay. And I thought, if I had a little shop, I could do it even better. I could buy them on eBay and sell them in a shop. So I put my name on the list. Sadly, he became ill shortly afterwards. And so the shop came up for sale and he went down his list and nobody had any money. And I was stupid enough to put my hand in my pocket and enter this torrid industry as a silent partner. And Sound Control had just gone down. And I'm a big Jam fan. So Sound Control connotations, sound effects, the Jam album just came up with the name really. And around about 18 months, I was a silent partner. And thereafter, I took redundancy from my job. And having messed up the banking industry, I thought I'd come and mess up this one.
Oh, well, that's a noble, noble thought.
So we started from a sort of a 300 square foot shop, populated by very cheap acoustic guitars and SpongeBob SquarePants ukuleles. And I took a look back at it one day. A very good friend, one of my oldest friends, Brian Cleary from Barnes and Mullins, said to me, "What do you want this to be?" And I said, "I want it to be a nice, credible guitar shop." And he said, "Right, we'll get rid of those SpongeBob SquarePants nonsense then and get your act together." Gave me a big shake and a bit of direction, and there we go. We started with Rickenbacker which is a big passion of mine, as our first sort of high end, and gradually got more and more. Became very good friends with PRS. That helped our business enormously, and we just grew into a sort of a. I'm hesitant to use the word boutique guitar shop because it sounds a bit non-inclusive, but primarily at the more expensive end of guitars is what we do.
I'm thinking back to the time when that was. So that's going to be what, 2006, 2007 kind
2008, yeah.
2008.
2007
right,
to 2008, yeah.
Just thinking back to when obviously everything went down with Sound Control. And are there many boutique shops in your neck of the woods? Because you are north, aren't you? You're up and across.
I'll get you a map for Christmas, but if you drew the United Kingdom in half, I'd probably still be in the bottom half in terms of that.
Yeah, but if you go up from between you and Scotland, there's not a right lot, is there? Let's in terms of commercial stuff, there's not a right lot. There's a lot of land.
There is some sheep, and if they built a high-speed railway line, there'd probably maybe a bit more up here. But anyway, we won't go on to that. Yeah, so I'm pretty north. So in our neck of the woods, you're absolutely right. There isn't a lot. There was at the time Sounds Great in Manchester, which obviously ceased trading. I think people probably know the story of that one. So yeah, there wasn't a lot really. I think it was from Jez from PRS. I think it was the furthest north he was going. Put it that way. And he packed an extra coat even in the summer.
Yes, I know your neck of the woods quite well because my brother went to college at Edge Hill.
All right, okay, yeah.
So I do know you. I do know where you are. It was just more a sense of there's not a lot. Having been on the road for years and years and years when I was at Shaw, you get to there and your next stop really of any note is Scotland. In terms of shops and what have you, that's the point I was kind of making. You have to go a long way from there to see a lot of
You go up to the northeast, you've got guitar and things.
Yes,
but essentially,
but on
if you carry on up the M6, unless you want to get married at Gretna Green, next stop is Glasgow.
Exactly. There's not a right lot, and there's always been that kind of weird divide between us and the Scots when it comes to music instruments for some slightly bizarre reason, but there kind of has been. Right, so you're doing that for a bit then. So how long does that process take to go from sort of SpongeBob ukuleles to credibility as
Well,
boutique guitars?
I'm
I'm
getting
getting
there.
there.
It was probably about 4 or 5 years. A big boost for us. As I said, talked about Sounds Great. Two very important guys from Sounds Great went and set up a company called Tone World in Manchester that got into difficulty. And when they got into difficulty, I bought it in liquidation, and that helped from a stock database contacts perspective. So that was a boost. That was probably around about 2014, something like that. So that was probably, I feel about that time, I felt we'd kind of arrived, I guess, in terms of being what we wanted to be. I always had this notion that if you've got a shop and you're selling a guitar and you've got a finite amount of staff and a finite amount of space, why not make it a higher ticket item?
Yeah.
So, it takes as much to stock a £3,000 guitar as it does a 300, and very similar selling times. It's just a bit more scarier on the bank balance.
Well, yeah, but I mean, how many transactions do you need to turn to make the same amount of numbers if the difference between the guitars is 2,700 quid? I mean, you can focus a lot more on those transactions if you're not having to be doing one every 10 minutes, theoretically.
And on a personal level as well, I was much more emotionally invested in brands like PRS and Rickenbacker and Music Man, etc., etc. So it was what I do, it has to really, really keep my interest, and that's where I wanted to be.
And probably to explain a little for people, it's not as simple as just throwing money at it just to start something like this, because there's waiting lists for the kind of stock you'll have needed. There's lead times. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with the channel to prepare yourself for those kind of dealerships as well. It's not as simple as just popping down and flashing a load of cash. By the way, if you'd got a load of cash that you really wanted to drop in one fell swoop, which is another thing as well in our industry that doesn't happen very often. But that development time, it does take time, doesn't it? You have to work through the process. You have to get those dealerships.
Build those relationships. And a very, really interesting one for me. So I really, really early on, I think it was probably when I was a silent partner before I actually worked in the shop, went to a guitar show, and I remember this was such a different response from two companies. I went to speak to Marshall and to PRS, and I spoke to Marshall, and I kind of had my intro, and it was something along the lines of, I've just got this shitty little guitar shop in Ormskirk, and I want to make it a really nice guitar shop, and it's about 300 square foot of SpongeBob SquarePants. And Marshall actually said to me, "We don't need people like you. Go away." They were almost the exact words. The words "we don't need people like you" was. And I spoke to Jez at PRS. Again, I sound like I'm going on and on about him. And he said, "Do you know what? It probably isn't right at the moment, but keep in contact. And once you've built it up a bit and tidied it up a bit, let's have a chat." And about 3 years later, we did.
Yeah.
And we ended up as one of the biggest PRS sellers in Europe.
And I'm guessing you don't carry a lot of Marshall.
Well, interestingly, Marshall then changed personality, and we did actually we did know Marshall. Then Marshall came to see me, said, "We'd like our amps in your shop now." And oh, would you? And they gave me lots of conditions under which it would happen. So I told them to go away. We then came to an agreement, and we ended up as the sixth biggest Marshall dealer in the country as well. And then they changed their model a bit, and not much backline is bought in shops these days. So we don't do Marshall anymore. I'm not a big fan of doing amplifiers generally, if I'm brutally honest. Again, my real interest is in high-end guitars. But yeah, they did come around in the end. I'm quite forgiving.
And am I right in saying then that cream tea is next? Were you always on the lookout for things?
I've dabbled in a few things. So as well as the shop, we then developed a teaching arm, and then got a purpose-built building where we had 10 teaching rooms and a recording studio. And one of my things was, although we did high-end guitars, I never wanted to be the shop where Mum walks in with Johnny and says he's got £99 and he wants to start playing the guitar. So the whole teaching thing, it never made a profit. It was always more of an altruistic community thing. We mentored young kids into bands so that they could have a safe place to play. We got venues for them to play. We formed bands in a live room in a studio. So there was a whole teaching thing around that. And my wife was largely responsible for building that up as well. As I say, we bought a building and converted it. And that fell over during COVID. We lost a lot of students. My wife was ill, and we didn't really have the appetite to build it up again. Just before COVID, then I met the original founder of Cream Tea who was from Norway, and invested in the company. And then as the teaching wasn't taking off again after COVID, and we needed more space, we used the building where we had done the teaching as a manufacturing facility for the pickups in Ormskirk.
Right. So what attracts you to Cream Tea then?
Um, it was just one of those strange turn of events, a bit like the being drunk at a party, really.
I was
So
going to say, were you drunk again?
I wasn't. No, I very, very. It's probably the last time I was drunk was at that party because I learned my lesson. Like a lot of guitar shop owners, I built up a very large collection of guitars, and and this is not the humble guitar shop owner, I am genuinely a terrible guitarist. Terrible. So I got a lot of guitars of quite high value. They were mine, but I didn't really do anything with them. And I woke up one day and I said to my wife, I said, "You know what? I'm going to get rid of all those guitars. I'm going to buy a camper van." So as you do, and I so put them up for sale. One of which I'd come across was an artist-proof Pearly Gates guitar. So from the Gibson Vault, one of the artist proofs, and I put it up for sale. And I had a message from Reverb saying, "I'm involved with the project with Billy Gibbons. I'd like to come and buy it." And Thomas Nilsson came along to have a look at the guitar, and agreed to buy it. He said, "I'll just ring Billy Gibbons and see if it's okay, see if it's..." And I was like, "Well, you've got Billy Gibbons on speed dial," and he genuinely did. He couldn't get hold of him on that occasion. He got hold of Elwood, but and then he showed me some of the pickups he made and told me a little bit of a story about it. And he clearly was somebody that was able to design and build pickups and engage, very important people, but didn't really have any commercial element to his business. He probably sold 20, 30 pickups a year, something like that. So we agreed I would invest in it and I would become his sales and marketing arm, essentially. So no, I wasn't looking for it. It was that I was selling a guitar.
That's incredibly fortuitous.
And I did buy the camper van, and I had it custom coloured, painted the same as Johnny Marr's KO Jaguar.
Is that like sparkle gold?
Orange.
Orange.
No, it's an orange. It's like a burnt orange colour. It was two-tone burnt orange and white. And I told Johnny Marr that recently. He was quite chuffed, actually. And he offered me a guitar lesson as well, and I turned him down because I thought he must have an assumed start bass point.
That is almost the best story for explaining why you've got a camper van that literally looks like a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
I'm loving that. Jace, don't forget that he just dropped Johnny Marr in. We need to mention that later on.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I heard the clank as well when he dropped it, but yeah, just drop that one in. Right. So how's Cream Tea then developed?
So we were obviously selling pickups. We scanned Billy's famous Pearly Gates. Obviously, Seymour Duncan have the Pearly Gates model, albeit that's not the same as ours, and it's not a direct replica. We launched the Whisker Bucker model, which was really, really popular, and that is literally a scan of the Pearly Gates with some scanning equipment that we have. And that was a really good foundation to take sales off. We then started opening out to retailers where we've only been selling direct, and we started getting builders involved. So it started to really pick up from a pickups perspective.
I mean, what's interesting about that is the bit I'm interested in, that probably because of my background in the industry, is that we've definitely jumped from SpongeBob ukuleles. There's been a definite shift there. We've arrived at boutique, quite happy, established as that. But then you start, you made all your relationships with a load of brands, so you're in that kind of network of boutique stores that have got similar relationships and that, this and the other. And then you're now going out to those businesses and looking for partners, looking for representatives geographically for the line that you're involved in. And that's the bit I'm quite interested in, because that's kind of, I'm not saying it's conflict of interest, it's not that at all, but there must be a little bit of tension when you make those first calls and you go and see those businesses for the first time.
Yeah, I suppose although you have to remember that because of particularly a very strong Billy Gibbons connection, but with Cream Tea, certainly in the early days, 70-80% of our sales were in America, and of course they've never heard of sound effects. So it's not really been a UK retail thing from a pickups perspective. And being blunt as well, there's good opportunities with the likes of builders to sell pickups, but local guitar stores selling pickup brands, you've got your Seymour Duncans or your Lollas or your Fraylins and that, but those small boutique brands, of which there are a lot, it's quite difficult for retailers to stock those and do anything with them. So it's more repair shops, builders, and then we did have shops in America as well, where the Whisker Bucker became a little bit of a flagship product. It was incredibly well packaged, which was all Billy's idea, and yeah, so that one, really flew. That was sort of a little bit of a heyday. We probably don't, from a retail perspective, sell quite as many pickups as we did when we first launched the Whisker Bucker. That was, we just couldn't make them quick enough.
Right, but actually that does explain it then, because what you're saying is you're probably going to work with somebody who's ultimately probably going to do the mod or the repair or the job on the guitar that the pickup's going in, rather than that. That makes
and be an advocate of the sound. As I say, there's a lot of pickups out there, and there's a lot of people making great pickups in the UK and all over the world, quite frankly.
I've always found it a bit like pedals, where you're almost overwhelmed by the sheer number.
Yeah,
you need somebody to curate that journey almost for you. So I suppose a builder who's very well aware of what the pickup does and the tone, and can advise somebody who's walking in saying, "This is the sound I'm after."
Yeah,
probably referencing a record, might be referencing an artist, whatever it is. Then those are the kind of people that you really.
Yeah, and as I say, we did have a real. We hadn't just got one pickup with Billy. We'd got half a dozen. There's the Sky Arts documentary, the little band from Texas one. If you watch that, and they play Brown Sugar, and they're playing his the pink peeler guitars with the magnetones in the background. They are our pickups on that video. He gets up on stage in front of lots of people, and they are our pickups. And that that stands for a lot, because whether you're a ZZ Top fan or not, if you're into playing the guitar, it's undisputed that he does have a great tone.
Yeah. So do you have Billy on speed dial now?
I wouldn't say I have him on speed dial, but we have. He's actually, as from another part of our business, he's actually a business consultant for us. So we have video calls with him, on which he advises on branding and building, etc., as opposed to make me a guitar or a pickup. So we have calls like this. We have Zoom calls with him.
Jace, I'm interested now as to what we're sandwiched in between. Whether we've been sandwiched in between Johnny Marr this morning and Billy Gibbons this afternoon. I'm quite intrigued now. This might be the closest to fame we've ever been. I mean, obviously, aside from obviously your own notoriety, Tim.
So you take the pickups and then you start making the guitars, Cream Tea guitars, based on the pickups. Is it?
Well, no, it wasn't quite that either, actually.
It's not going to be that simple, Jason.
No, it's never going to be that. Oh, God, I wish my life was simple. So, from a retail perspective, I had been selling a brand of guitars called Relish, who are a Swiss brand. And there was quite a divisive and innovative guitar that they had. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It had all sorts of advances in it. The one that I liked was the pickup swapping. So it had the ability to take the pickups out and swap them over in seconds. And I liked it. I liked the guys at the company, the Swiss guys, but they were struggling to get engagement and, quite frankly, sales. And I was trying to say to them in the most diplomatic way I could, why don't you put that pickup swapping system in a more conventional guitar? I think I might have used the word "not in a fuck ugly guitar."
I do hope you did.
Which was probably unkind, and I was probably doing it to make the point rather than I particularly thought it was a fuck ugly guitar, because I didn't mind it too much. But as we all know, if something wasn't designed before 1970 in guitar world, you're already on a back foot from a shape perspective. So the shape was okay, but I don't think it ever really tested whether people wanted pickup swapping or not, because they were making other decisions as well. And they said, well, our plan is to go to other builders and get them to adopt the system. So they were going to go business to business with this pickup swapping system. And I said, well, look, I know a few people because of the pickup building and the retail bit. I'll try and see if I can speak to some builders and help and see what you can do. So I spoke to a few, one of which was PJD Guitars based in York, the UK guitar builder. And the guys that were running PJD at the time said to me, look, it's not for us, but we have capacity within what we're doing to build more guitars. You've got a pickup company. Why don't you start building your own guitars? But we will build them for you on an OEM basis and adopt the pickup swapping system in it. And after about 20 seconds thought, I thought, yeah, give that a go. Why not have your own guitar brand as well? It probably was about 20 seconds. I came back to Thomas Nilsson, again, the founder of Cream Tea. He told Billy, and Billy immediately said, if you're going to do that, I will design a guitar for you. Never to be a Billy Gibbons signature or anything like that, but he had some ideas on, bringing new shapes into the market, not being too divisive, and et cetera, et cetera. So we got a little cut and paste drawing that was essentially the arse of a Telecaster, the mid waist of a Les Paul, and a Martin-esque headstock that was literally a cut and paste that needed some finessing, shall we say, but that became the Aurora guitar that we launched with, and it had either pickup swapping or not pickup swapping in it. And that was an extension then to Relish's business, selling us the housings for the pickup swapping.
And then you bought Relish.
Yeah, so Relish, that wasn't my attempt to help them along, wasn't the end of their troubles. So they got into difficulty early part of last year, 2023, which was obvious that was happening. And from my perspective, it wasn't particularly the brand Relish or their ugly guitar. It was really the pickup swapping I was very, very interested in. So I bought it in administration jointly with another company that had been involved with Relish, and we got the rights to the pickup swapping system, and we got all their old stock and spare parts, etc., etc. But it's not a name that we would use. It wasn't for that. It was for the pickup swapping. They spent a lot of money getting the worldwide patent for that pickup swapping system, and I believed that it was a good system, just not popularized enough. And then I rebranded it straight away to Guitar X. That's not me being a fan of Elon Musk or anything. It's just looking around for names, and it was just one I came up with and went, yeah, do you know what, that'll do. So the Relish pickup system still exists. There's no changes to it other than the fact it says Guitar X on it.
So you've got them in your own guitars, which is a line that's kind of developed, hasn't it? It's not just the Aurora now. There's like 4 different models.
No, we've got 3 models. So we've got the Aurora, which is a Les Paul-esque style, single cut style. We've got the Polaris, which is sort of super strat style. And then more recently, we've got this one, which is the Astra, which is a T style with some very interesting electronics in it. So we've got 3 models in there. We did have an additional model called a Crossfire that went out of production, but it's coming back into production. You heard it here first. So that will come back in next year. So we've developed that line of guitars over the last couple of years.
UK GB, was that what they were called? GB
Yes.
UK. Oh yeah. Guitar builders.
Well, it was when I first started dealing with it was PJD. That then evolved into UK Guitar Builders, which was an ambitious project, even further north than here, in a place called York. So that was an ambitious project to act as an OEM house for a number of guitar brands.
So that's gone now. So are you manufacturing them yourself, or?
No, I've never made anything really other than a mess. So the at the point that UKGB went into administration, somebody else was looking to take their own business in a different direction. It was the owner of Auden and Gordon Smith, who had a small...
Oh, Doug.
Yeah, Doug. So he had a small factory that was making his guitars and Auden, and he was involved in looking at making something else, and that project's still ongoing. So he wanted to have a slightly bigger factory, and I rang him up because he's been a good friend of mine for many years, and said, look, Doug, would you help, by making me some guitars? So we struck up a relationship there. So we have a sort of a dedicated facility within that. So it's kind of a sort of subsection of what Gordon Smith do, which is now expanded into quite a significantly bigger animal than it was a couple of years ago. He's gone from sort of 3 to 18 people, and quite a large factory capable of a large output. And there are some plans that will become more public in the near future there.
Is that what he's intending to do at the guitar show next year?
I'll leave that all to Doug. Yeah.
I had a message off him the other day. He'd been out at the Music China.
Yeah.
And I think he'd had quite a good time. And he said, ask Craig from Marshall about playing the drums with beer bottles and just left it at that.
That's probably a good place to leave that, yeah.
And aren't we scheduled in to be speaking to Craig from Marshall?
We are, yeah, so we'll ask him.
We'll ask him about playing drums with beer bottles then.
Yeah. Ask him about telling me that I didn't need people like me.
We are going to now. That's the second question he's going to
It would probably be unkind. I could name the individual that said it to me, but I won't.
You can tell us after.
I'll wait until the red disappears.
So bring us to where we are with the umbrella company. Because by the sounds of things, there's always something going on with you.
Yeah, we missed the step of the record label and the pedal hire company, but we'll leave that for another day. They all happened as well, and the danceware. There was many things happened.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. Pedal hire is interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
Danceware, that's really piqued my interest.
One of my very last customers from danceware was Paul Reed Smith, who bought a tutu. I had this. You've got to bear in mind, you rather than failed musician setting up a music shop, this is ex-banking strategist, overthinker of everything, setting up a music shop. And I went into full-on sexist mode. If bearing in mind 15 years ago plus, whereby most music shops, general music shops, would look forward to Christmas and selling a couple of hundred guitar packs. You'd have a room full of them.
Yeah.
So I came up with this theory that who makes that purchase in a household? And that purchase in a household is usually made by mum. But mum didn't frequent music stores. She would go to Argos or to other things. So if I gave mum a reason to come into my store, I would do very well from mum buying things. So I set up a small dancewear section in my music shop, and we sold dance shoes. And we then did some contracts with local dance schools to supply all their uniform and all their costumes. So it actually became quite a reasonable sized business. So the mums were very used to coming in all year round and buying from us from a little profitable business. So when it came to Christmas, we were an obvious choice for buying the guitar pack. Similarly, if she was dropping, and I am being sexist here, and apologies, they're dropping Sally off for a dance lesson, well, drop Johnny off for a guitar lesson at the same time. It sounds utterly ridiculous, but theoretically, it had a lot of legs, and it really worked to get traffic into our shop and sell a lot of guitar packs. And now Gear for Music, Argos, and Amazon do them all.
Did COVID kill that then? Is that another COVID casualty?
No, I killed that, to be honest, because I got fed up of trying to put dance shoes on people. It was from a financial perspective, it worked, but it was hard work, and it had kind of done its job. I'd got my name on the map in the local area. So I gave it to a local businessman. I gave the whole business wholesale to him, and he completely screwed it up. We just stopped doing it, basically. And we were running out of space every time, somebody would turn up and buy some guitars in the van. I was thinking, I could put the guitars on the wall, or I could have another tutu. And as I say, genuinely, one of our last customers for it was Paul Reed Smith bought a tutu to take down to Jeff, who sadly passed away from World Guitars, as a little bit of a joke. So he took one down there to him. I don't think it would ever have fit him.
We haven't talked about Newman guitars before we get onto AMW.
So Newman Guitars, very, very brief backstory of the brand of it. So Newman Guitars was set up by Ted Newman-Jones, who was the first ever allegedly guitar tech. So he hustled his way into the Rolling Stones, saying that he'd stand at the corner of the stage and tune them up for them, and they had to think a name for him, so they called him Guitar Tech. And then towards the end of the 1970s, he was still working with the Rolling Stones, but he wanted to set up a guitar company. And Keith Richards gave him $30,000 to set up a guitar company.
Wow.
And he devised the shape that is Newman, and it hasn't really changed much since those latter days. And they built a 5-string guitar, because Keith, obviously well known for taking a 1-string off. So they came up with a 5-string guitar. And then they built 6-string guitars for Dylan, Tom Petty, all sorts of people had them. And the brand then went really dipped down, sort of, like there's a Matis of the world and many others kind of disappeared for a number of years. And then a guy called Jeff Smith bought it about 8 years ago, shortly before Ted Newman-Jones died. And they documented everything and got all the shapes done. And Billy got involved with that as well, just as a sort of a coincidence. He got involved with playing them. Guitars very similar to this, bought them from Jeff and toured with them quite extensively. But Jeff needed to source the pickups for them. And Billy insisted that they were always cream tea pickups going into it. So he started buying pickups from me. We struck up a conversation, and he does talk to Billy a huge amount, and Billy helps him with his business. And he was asking how to scale it up. So the model up until a couple of years ago was that he had 5 builders in the US that custom built the guitars. Jeff didn't build anything, so he'd have 5 luthiers would build the guitars. Only about 25, 30 guitars a year. Most of them sold before they were built, but he couldn't scale it up in any way. And we came together and offered a solution to scale that up by manufacturing them in the UK. And yeah, so that's how that came about. So we have a licensing agreement to manufacture Newman guitars in the UK, but sell them worldwide.
Oh, right. So are you deliberately targeting Rolling Stones fans, Dylan fans, Petty fans, or?
Well, we did the 5-string.
The 5-string is quite unique, isn't
It's
it?
so niche. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. I could go all Alan Partridge on here and say there's no such thing as quite unique. It is, there is, or it isn't. One of my favourite ever
agree with that.
sketches. Yeah, we'd like that to appeal a little bit wider. That's where the Johnny Marr thing comes in, interestingly. But we'd like that to appeal a little bit wider than people just playing Rolling Stones stuff. You're never going to sell many guitars on a 5-string basis. What we have done is have this Honeycomb Junior that's behind there, the blue one. We've just delivered some black ones of those to Billy, and he played them. We delivered them at lunchtime, and he played them in front of 25,000 people that night, matching guitars and basses. We just done that a few weeks ago over in America. So we think that's probably more where the market would lie for us with that, and it's got pickup swapping in it as well, which Billy used. But the 5-string's an interesting one to launch the brand with because it's kind of where it started, really.
Yeah. I believe that Keith McCorber has a specifically made bridge. It's not a 6-string bridge with one of the saddles taken off. It's actually a 5. Have you got a specific 5-string bridge
Like
as
that.
well?
Machined in America by a man who makes exhaust manifolds. And when it comes to us, it feels like it's made by a man who makes exhaust manifolds. It's somewhat industrial and crude and would go well under a bonnet, but it's not great if you put your palm on it. So yeah, this is a dedicated Newman 5-string bridge. This is a prototype that just happened to be at arm's length. Here's one I made earlier. I didn't make it. They made in America. Newman have the design for that. So yeah, it has a dedicated 5-string bridge. Very long answer to a very easy question.
Jace, Tim's really well organised and well prepared for this, isn't he?
Don't ask me for anything else.
Well, I suppose we come on to AMW distribution.
Yes, so that happened. I'd say Relish got into difficulty, and I then proceeded down the long-winded process of buying a liquidated company in Switzerland, and during that process, a Swiss investor had been interested in Relish, I understand. However, he decided not to lose a lot more money than the people who'd already lost money. So he backed away. And then the CEO of Relish got together with an investor and they wanted to start a jazz guitar brand as a complete cold start brand. And again, a complete set of coincidental things. I hadn't spoken to the ex-CEO, but in acquiring Relish, I got their Instagram account and I needed to get the telephone number verification number in order to get into it. I'd got the password, but not the verification number. So I rang him up just out the blue and said, I don't suppose it's your number. I need to try and get into this Instagram account. He said, no, I'm just what you up to? He said, I'm starting a jazz guitar brand with an investor, albeit it's a complete cold start jazz guitar brand. That's not the easiest thing in the world. And in an ideal world, we'd like to buy a guitar company that is profitable and already established. And I was like, well, why don't you buy Cream Tea then? I said it as a joke, if I'm honest. And he said, well, you're a new company and you're not profitable. And I was like, excuse me, we are profitable. Thank you very much, albeit we're new. So that started a sequence of events whereby they offered to purchase. I didn't really want to sell it, though. It wasn't really of any interest. It was literally said as a joke. But over a number of conversations, we decided that we'd do something a little bit bigger than that. And we would set up, I'm not sure what you call it, but maybe a small private equity fund in Switzerland that was financed to do things in the music industry, primarily guitar related. So that effectively, that AMW company owns Cream Tea now, and it owns the license for Newman, etc., etc. And that's how that established. And quite quickly we decided that At the same time, sorry, I'd been working quite heavily with Maybach, Tony from Maybach Guitars, um, and he was looking for a new distributor in the UK. At the same time that I was trying to make a decision as to how I sold our guitars. Do I go through distribution, or do I employ somebody? If you employ somebody, you've got to be obviously selling a lot of guitars to cover their costs, which we clearly weren't. But Tony asked if I would distribute Maybach, because he was without a distributor, and I thought, well, that probably does add up to a salesperson then. So we decided to employ a great salesperson, which we have, and yeah, we're distributing Maybach, and then Kaufman Guitars from Holland approached us with a view to distributing their guitars. I'd been selling them quite a lot in sound effects, and they wanted us to do some more work with them as well.
Wow. Many fingers, many pies.
Many pies.
We are back to where we started. Do you know what, Tim? I don't know if we've ever had anyone on the podcast who seems to network with the proficiency and professionalism and sheer skill that you do. Now, it might be when you're drunk, and it might all be accidental, and there might be no plan attached to any of it. But bloody hell, you have done some stuff.
It's been a busy year. I was supposed to be winding down towards retirement.
Right? How's that working out for you?
I'm over 40 years old, would you believe it?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, I'd have had you in your mid-40s.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not working out well at all. I'm probably working more now than I ever did.
Because AMW is going to be work for a while yet, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And to be fair, I joke about winding down, providing I'm enjoying it, and it's doing the right things economically. I'm very happy to continue. I think I'd drive my wife mad if I was at home all day.
And there's a very good chance, if everything is going well, people are going to come and they are going to want your number. They're going to seek you out, and they're going to say, actually, how would you like to help me with this? Because the one thing we know about our industry is there's a hell of a lot of brands.
Yeah.
There's always somebody looking to change the way they're doing their business, how they're taking their products to market, always.
Yeah.
And I know Jace mentioned NAM earlier on, and obviously he mentioned Music China as well. But I mean, the one thing about our industry, when you put a point in the world and people get together, it's amazing how many distribution relationships, how many go-to-market relationships you suddenly find get announced as being changed, or there's a development in them about 2 months later.
Yeah, and it's funny you say about NAM and networking. So I'd been an attendee of NAM for a number of years. I didn't go any years by any stretch of the imagination, but from a sound effects perspective. And then 2024, I went for the first time with a completely different agenda. This was Cream Tea, looking for brands, etc. And I remember coming home and saying to my other half, I was saying, I didn't realize I knew so many people, and they have such a different meaning and value when you flip the coin and you become a manufacturer, distributor, etc. I'd never really thought they're just friends. You just go along and treat people right, pay them on time, and you accumulate friends in the industry. And I didn't realize the value that could potentially have.
Oh, it has an amazing value, and I think, having Jace does events like NAM slightly differently from the way that I've done events like NAM, obviously, because he's going from the guitar show perspective. I've been at NAM as a purchaser for a retail business, and I've been at NAM as a sales director, and they're very different trips. When you go as somebody in purchasing, you're on booths, you're looking at products, you're really into the detail, and when you go maybe with distribution in mind, or with slightly a broader sort of range of things that you're thinking about, possibly a little bit detached from the actual detail of the product, you find those conversations are massively different, and most of them don't even take place in the hall.
No, and some of them are very. I mean, again, one we sort of touched on, but not touched on, is this little fella in the corner, which is a Stromberg guitar. That was as a result of a probably sub 10-minute conversation and a very noisy NAM hall where I got introduced to what was the owner of Stromberg Guitars, and I got introduced to him by Tony of Maybach, and he mentioned that he wanted to sell it, and then that involved me going over and speaking to him, etc., and purchasing that as a brand. And as I say, it was literally very noisy, could hardly hear him. Less than 10 minutes in his English, which is not his native language, was certainly far better than my attempt at his language, and there we go.
Yeah, I don't think people realise just how ridiculously loud Nam is.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unbearably loud at times.
yeah, it's nearly as loud as the Birmingham Guitar Show.
Oh, fuck off.
In half an hour bursts.
Half an hour burst, that's the difference.
No, it is funny in that respect, because some of the best meetings I've had at the NAM show have been at things like in the line for immigration, or in the line at Heathrow, waiting to get back through passport control, or queuing to get on the plane. It's amazing where you bump into people, because it's not even just in Anaheim.
No.
It's, it could be walking down the street in in Santa Monica or wherever it tends to be, and that's the one thing that is great about. I mean, the point you made there is because our industry is so incestuous, you do then get to know so many people, and you can't walk more than 10 yards without seeing somebody that you know.
No.
Even when you've travelled, as many thousand miles around the world as you have to be there.
Do you know what? We went on holiday a few years ago. We were like family holiday. We went from San Francisco all the way down the Pacific Coast Highway. And we ended up at Anaheim, and the kids went to Disney. We all went to Disney, but took the kids to Disney and stuff like that. And it really freaked me out that, because I've done 22 NAMs or something, and you can't walk anywhere in Anaheim without bumping into somebody from the trade.
Yeah.
Except when you're on your annual holiday with your family. And I'm walking through downtown Disney going, I don't know anyone, but I'm scanning all the faces all the time. It's
I've
so
done the same.
weird.
Yeah. I've been on a family holiday there. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And I went into the Marriott bar and I could get served. It was weird.
Yeah. Where is everybody?
Yeah.
So, Tim, I mean, thank you very much for your time. It's been lovely to talk to you. I suppose what we need to ask, well, there's a couple of things we need to ask before we go. One, Johnny Marr?
So, one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, and my absolute guitar hero. I got the opportunity to go and spend some time with him and give him one of our 5-string guitars that I thought, he's clearly Fender Jaguar man. That that's never ever going to change. But I kind of felt that he'd be the sort of person that might do something on it a bit different from a writing perspective. So let's see what happens. He liked the guitar and he's played it. More importantly than that, I got to play all the Smiths guitars badly. So I got myself into the position where he offered me a guitar lesson there and then to play some Smith stuff, and that was not a good place.
To be fair, though, yes, he is associated with Fender, but I mean, I've got his book on the shelf here, and it's like he'll play anything. He just seems to just like guitars.
Yeah, he's a very humble guy and genuinely interested in guitars. I think probably he would like nothing more than be able to just put a mask on and just go around guitar shops and go and talk to people. Unfortunately, the sort of the downside of the sort of fame and success is that is less easy for him than your average punter. But I think, he would absolutely love that opportunity. So he does come to this shop, and we try and be as as normal to him as possible. Because I think that
Try and sell him a tutu.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some left in a cupboard.
Where the kettle is. Put it on yourself. Go on.
Yeah. That's good. He's a nice guy.
That's really lovely to hear, because they're not. I've never liked the Smiths, right? Never liked the Smiths.
See ya.
But and I think it's more that I probably don't like Morrissey, actually, if I'm being honest. But it never hit me at the time. And it's my son likes them, and he's and it's one of those conversations we have. But I think because of that, I've never really taken much interest in Johnny Marr until recently, and yet all I seem to have heard and the bits I've seen is just how well regarded he is by pretty much everybody.
Yeah, and he has, it's Johnny Marr style. Can I tell you why he offered me a guitar lesson?
Go on then.
So, in our music school, we had a guitar tutor that came to join us, and he played with the Drifters and Van Morris and all sorts of people, a session musician. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to sort this not being able to play the guitar problem out. I'm going to learn to play the guitar properly. So I said, Lenny, there's the guy's name, I won't know it's just a second now. I said, will you, I'd like to have some lessons with you because you're the best tutor we've ever had. and I'd like to learn some Smiths, please. Now, he only played by ear. So every week I'd say to him, we're going to have that lesson. Yeah, we're going to do some Smiths. And he came back after a few weeks and he says, I can't figure out how to play any of it. And he said, and the irony of it is, he said, when I was a lad, he said, I left school very early. He said, and I gigged around Manchester when I should have been at school. And Johnny Marr's mum and dad used to come and watch me. And they used to say to me, can you have a word with our Johnny? He's holed up in his bedroom with this weirdo called Stephen, and they reckon they're going to be famous, and I'm really worried about him. So can you tell him to get a proper job like you've got? So I told Johnny this story, and he went, do you know what? I was holed up in my bedroom with a weirdo. And he said, so if you want to learn some Smith stuff, do you want me to show you some stuff now? And I was like, no, you're all right. As I say, I think he would have assumed a sort of a base level for starting, and I didn't want to embarrass myself.
That must have been awful, because part of you must have been screaming, "Of course, I do."
Absolutely, yeah. And it was, I had the black Rickenbacker in my hand, he let me play all. He was kind enough to let me play all of the, the famous Smith guitars, and I was like, nope, I won't do this charming idiot.
That might be one of the best stories we've ever had, actually. On the podcast. It's a good job you didn't come on early on, Tim, because we probably would have just stopped after that. Or maybe you should have come on early on. Maybe you should have stopped after that.
I'm highly flattered.
I said there were two questions. That literally, what the last one is, I kind of know what you're going to say, I think. But is it what's next? Is it just AMW and just working on that, or is there something? I mean, have you got something completely left field?
I have some stuff up my sleeve for next year, which I can't say. I think I'm hoping Billy and Newman will be a big part of next year. As I say, we recently delivered to him a guitar and bass. We only had about 30 days notice to build a guitar and bass and get them to him at a gig, and he played them. He was delighted with them, so I think that he will be quite an advocate for us on those for next year. And then, a couple of other interesting things up my sleeve that I'll come and talk to you about it next year if that's okay.
I was going to say, can you come back and tell us? Because I'd really quite like to do this again.
Yeah, maybe do that. Yeah,
because I don't think we've scratched the surface of Tim's stories, if I'm being honest. Tim, you're an absolute star. Thank you very much for your time. It is always lovely to see you.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for being very gentle on me.
Jace, I guess I'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to 9 to 42, the podcast from the team at the Guitar Show UK. If you've enjoyed the show, then please remember to hit the subscribe button and share with other like-minded souls. For more information about 9 to 42, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram at the Guitar Show UK. This has been an A Short Stories production.